Okay, folks, we're going live. Not that we're not live already, but Cindy, let me know when we're ready to go. Okay, it is 4 o'clock and I'm going to call this meeting to order. And first, I'd like to make the land acknowledgement. I would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional and unceded territory of the Algonquin Nation. And now we have our first motion. Motion moved by Dan Meeks and seconded by Bill Everett, that the rules of procedure order be amended to move presentations and delegations and public meetings ahead in the agenda to follow number 5, Mayor's remarks. That the agenda for the regular council meeting held January 24th, 2023 be approved as, are there any amendments, Kathy?
Yes, there are, Madam Mayor. Under new business, I'm not sure if it's on your agenda. I think maybe Cindy may have added it. Today, it was the request from the Heritage Festival.
Okay.
Okay, so that's on new business.
New business. Okay. All those in favor of the agenda as amended? Carried. Is there any pecuniary interest in general nature thereof of any item on tonight's agenda by any member of council? Craig and Nikki. You've got your paperwork. Do you want to just tell us out loud what your? Okay, so on accounts payable. Okay.
Yes, on accounts payable, my brother's receiving a check for welding work he did for the township.
Okay. And Nikki?
On accounts payable as well, payment to my place of employment.
Okay. So we'll note those. We'll move on as you get your paperwork done. Moved by Dan Meeks and seconded by Bill Everett, that the minutes of the regular council meeting held January the 10th, 2023 be approved as presented. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. Mayor's remarks. I really don't have any remarks for tonight. I haven't been feeling well, so I haven't gone anywhere, done much. So there'll be a whole bunch for next month as I'm feeling better. So we're going to do our delegations, and we have the Charlotte Lake Family Health Team, Deborah Krause, and some partners with her. Do you want to come to this table? And you have to push the button to get the red light and speak right into it so people on the video can hear.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jeanette Dietrich. I'm the lead physician for the Rural Kingston Family Health Organization, and I practice in Sydenham.
I'm Deborah Krause. I'm the executive director of the Charlotte Lake Family Health Team just down the hill. And we also have Sarah Gibbons, who's the lead physician for the Verona Clinic. Slides are up. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having us here today. The importance of having physicians in the community is very key in terms of how the communities function and your population is able to thrive. So we are looking forward to working with you to address the need for physicians. And just next slide, please. Does that work? Okay. So a little bit about what we're working with here. The population characteristics, as you can see, there's been significant population growth through Central, Northern, and South Frontenac in the last few years. That drives the needs for physicians. The other thing that has a key impact on our need for physicians is the fact that a significant amount of our population is over the age of 65. And this means the care tends to be a bit more complex. The two factors together really highlight the need to have enough physicians in our communities to serve people. Next slide, please. So the 4 clinics, this slide sort of demonstrates how much our patient population overlaps in terms of which clinics people come to. It also means that we have 4 clinics covering a very large geographic area. We're also highly reliant on each other. So each of these clinics has between 1 and 3 physicians and fairly large patient rosters. We can't afford to lose any of them. Because literally, if Verona goes, there's no way Charlotte can absorb that many patients and Sydenham can't absorb that many patients. The other thing of note is the fact that the allied health providers, such as the nurses, the dietitians, the mental health workers through the FIT, we have to be affiliated with a physician. So you risk in communities not only just losing physicians, but the affiliated health teams that support them. And next slide, please. So this gives you a little bit of a snapshot of our clinics and how many physicians are in each. And the scary part's how many patients they're looking after in each. We need additional physicians now just to handle this patient volume. Over and above the growth, over and above the fact that within this patient group, we have several that would like to retire someday. And next slide, please. This is a bit of data, a bit wider to our region, which is the Southeast Local Health Integration Network. Nice scary number at the top in terms of 29,000 unattached patients. The South Frontenac Town Council asked, well, what happens if one of the clinics goes down? Can't we just get service in Kingston? There's 29,000 people that already can't get service in Kingston. They're short as well. As rural communities, the bottom point is important because we already have fewer family physicians providing service to the people who live here per 1,000 than you would normally see in a metropolitan area such as Toronto or Ottawa. So we're already a lot of patients for very few doctors. And next slide, please. So what do we need to do? Over to Jeanette.
Next slide, please. Thanks. Okay, so this is taken from a survey of family medicine residents looking at where they might want to practice and what would be important for them when they decide to set up their practice. So you can see that over 50% of them are considering rural or smaller cities. So that's to our benefit. Next slide, please. And then when looking at the things that are important to them at the top, you can see the joining the family health or family health network. Those are just different payment models. We are under the family health organization, the FO acronym model. So we're well situated in that way. Things like proximity to family and finding spousal employment are a little bit harder in rural areas than they are in larger cities, but we'll talk about things that can help with that. Having additional work outside the clinic practice that is easily accessible through Napanee or Perth, where they have hospitals where family physicians have opportunities to do other work, or teaching through Queen's, as most of us take students through Queen's. Financial incentives we'll talk about. You have the FIT here in Sharbot Lake, so that's an opportunity. And then we all have physician colleagues that would be working and able to mentor these new graduates. So we are well positioned in many ways, but we need some assistance with certain things. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'll start more at the bottom here. These are the ways that they search for jobs after residency. So the most important thing is networking. So if you've done a placement or a locum position in a spot, you're much more likely to come there to practice. And all of us take students in the hopes that they'll like our practice and return when they graduate. And we work hard on them to encourage them to come back. But that takes a few years for them to finish up their practice. We are advertising through the Health Force Ontario jobs. We'll talk about physician recruiters and job fairs. We did get some funding through the townships to attend a type of job fair last year where we could set up a recruitment booth. We'll talk about that a bit more. Next slide. Okay, so these are the sorts of supports that I'll be going through. Of course, they all come with a price tag. And this is to sort of boost our chances of being able to recruit physicians to the area. So I'll go through them one by one. Next slide, please. So in terms of a signing bonus, you're probably aware that Kingston started offering a signing bonus about 18 months ago, maybe. They've recruited, I don't know, 9 or 10 physicians since they implemented that. So it has been successful, although I should say that those physicians they recruited basically replaced people who left. So it's not net new. They're basically back to where they were. And we have a number of physicians still leaving next year. Napanee and Hastings offer a similar bonus, and they were quite successful, 4 or 5 years ago when they introduced that in bringing in a number of new grads. As you're probably aware, North Frontenac and Charlotte Lake, because of their rural nature, the Ministry of Health does provide a bonus for them. North Frontenac gets a top up from the township. Now Charlotte Lake, with the bonus they get from the ministry, is a little bit south of what all the other areas are offering. So they would need a top up to 100,000 over the 5 years to be equivalent to the surrounding areas. And this is important for recruiting physicians who are now graduating with hundreds of thousands in debt with student loans. Next slide, please. The second thing to consider is an experienced recruiting person. This is not my day job. I'm not trained. Neither is Deb. We do our best, but hopefully we could use the assistance of someone who knows what they're doing and knows what channels to use, knows how to advertise, knows how to work media, and someone to do the day-to-day legwork of recruiting, showing people around when they're interested, et cetera. It's not a good use of my time to spend a few hours making a slideshow. I would better spend that time seeing patients. The second option is a headhunter, where you only pay when you place someone in the job. And for the first option for the recruiter, it could be shared with other local areas. We wouldn't need one full-time person just for this area. So it could be shared to recruit to the whole area. Next slide, please. Recruitment fairs, we did the one through the Society of Rural Physicians conference last spring. There's another conference with that agency coming up this spring in Niagara. It might be useful to attend that, but of course there's costs with that. And then all of the universities that have residency programs also have job fairs. Again, it would be useful to attend those and speak specifically to the residents prior to graduation. And it would be nice to be able to have some swag to hand out at these tables, labeled with our name, our location, our contact information. Something from local businesses would, promote the area as well. Next slide, please. And we mentioned that family career opportunities is really important and a bit more of a challenge in the rural area. So Keys offers this dual career program where they will help settle not the person who got the job, but their family as well. So they have connections to reach out to find employment that isn't maybe advertised in regular media sources, and other connections for elder care, child care, volunteer, what have you, whatever is needed. Next slide, please. Physical infrastructure. Many communities assist with physical infrastructure, which Central Frontenac is already doing with the Charlotte Lake Clinic, so I won't spend a lot of time here. I think we can probably move on to the next slide. We'd like to thank the townships and the county for the help we've already had. Richard Allen with Frontenac County has been working on a video with us and a variety of other recruitment materials. The support for the booth at the conference last year, the ongoing support for physical infrastructure and vaccination clinics, et cetera. We've had a good partnership to date, and we're hoping to keep moving forward with that so we can be successful in these recruitment efforts.
Next slide, please. So you've got a copy of the slides. I'm not going to hit all the bullet points. The key point about this particular slide is that a healthier population means a more vibrant rural community. You've got people able to work, you've got people able to generate income. Next slide, please. And this one I'll just leave to your notes rather than going into the detail. And next slide, this one. So in closing, there are several ways that town council can help us with attracting physicians to the communities. The patients do come from across municipal boundaries, which is one of the challenges that we're facing. So it does need to be a collaborative effort. We're doing our thing, but we do need more help than just we're able to put into this. So the big things were the recruitment incentive, just so it's a level playing field. It's unfortunately kind of the price of admission now that people don't even really look at you if that's not on the table. Professional recruiting support, whether that's a shared person with like Lennox and Addington or something, because we don't have enough work that it would be a full-time person, but support for covering a part-time person. When we talked at the county, I don't know if they've got other staff that's already recruiting, that this could be an add-on to that kind of a position. But at least somebody who has actual recruiting training. I mean, I've got some marketing training, but it's outside my wheelhouse over and above outside the time available to do it off the corner of my desk. The recruitment fair, to get a booth in for the Rural Physicians Conference, we're going to actually have to do that in the next couple of weeks if we're going to still get a booth, because that fair is in April. That is one of the ones that we really kind of targeted because it is a rural physicians focus. It's a national conference specific to rural physicians. There's no shortage of physician conferences. You could probably do dozens in a month. But that one was the one that, in terms of the type of people we're trying to attract, you've got the right people in the room that are going to love communities such as ours. Partner employment support for helping them either find work or get an entrepreneurial venture off, and the infrastructure help. And last slide, please.
Okay,
The thank yous there. I thought it wasn't going to come up. So thank you in advance for your support. We really look forward to working with you and whatever this can look like. And I believe you've been provided with sort of an itemized list in terms of costs that are associated with the different pieces to help try and give you a little bit more flexibility in terms of what you may or may not be able to help with this effort. So thank you very much for your time.
okay. Does council have any questions or comments? We're in the throes of budget, so certainly you will be on our minds. I have a motion moved by Dan and seconded by Bill. The council received the presentation from Deborah Krause, Executive Director, Charlotte Lake Family Health Team regarding physician recruitment. And you. All those in favor? Carried. This presentation was also made to county, and county is looking at what they can do as well. So doctors do make our communities. So thank you for your service. All right, next we have public meetings. That's for you. And I don't have my agenda. Who's the first one?
Right there.
It just says,
City zoning bylaw amendment.
okay, so the first one is the zoning. There's two we're going to do together, the zoning bylaw amendment and the official plan amendment, as far as what I'm reading to you right now. So this is the procedure for the public meeting under the Planning Act, ZB 622. The Council of the Township of Central Frontenac is conducting two public meetings under the Planning Act. These meetings with respect to application ZB 0622 for a housekeeping amendment to correct an administrative error in Schedule A1-A5-5 of Bylaw 2022-61 and OP-01-22 being an administrative amendment in response to changes in the Planning Act as set out in Bill 13 and Bill 109. I will now ask the deputy clerk to advise the method by which notice of the meetings were given and confirmation as to the date that notice was given.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I can confirm that for both applications, the official plan and the zoning bylaw amendment, there was an ad put in the Frontenac News on December 15th, 2022. The notices for both public meetings were posted on our website as of December 15th. Agencies and bodies were notified as well pursuant to the regulations on December the 15th. With respect to the zoning bylaw amendment, we also included that notice on our Engage Frontenac project page as well.
Okay. Any person who wishes to receive a copy of the minutes of the public meeting, a copy of the report or notice of the passing should indicate their full name, address, postal code, and contact numbers to Cindy Dickman, Deputy Clerk, at the contact information provided in the report. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at the public meeting or make written submissions to the Township of Central Frontenac before the proposed amendments being adopted, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decisions of the Council of the Township of Central Frontenac to the Ontario Land Tribunal and may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Lands Tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. The procedure for the public meeting will be as follows. Staff will be asked to explain the purpose of the public meeting and present the planning report. I will then inquire if there are any persons present who wish to make an oral or written submission on the proposal. If so, you should announce your name and state whether you support or oppose the proposal. If you are attending virtually and wish to speak, please use the raise hand feature at the bottom of your screen or *9 if attending by phone. Should there be any person wishing to make comments on or ask questions about the proposals, they will be given opportunity to address council. Please be aware that all persons wishing to address the issues should direct their comments and questions through the chair. I would also note that personal information collected as a result of these public meetings is collected under the authority of the Municipal Act, the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, the Planning Act, and all other relevant legislation, and will be used to assist in making a decision on these matters. All personal information is defined by MFIPA, including but not limited to name, addresses, opinions, and comments collected will be made available for public disclosure to members of the public at the meeting through requests and through the website of the Corporation of the Township of Central Frontenac. Questions regarding the collection, use, and disclosure of this personal information may be directed to the clerk. So I will ask one of the planners to start. Dimitri, are you taking the lead on this? Or Sonia? You've got to get the technology organized.
Through you, Madam Mayor, just to explain. So planning staff were not involved in the report for the rezoning because it is just an administrative error that is being corrected. So we have no formal presentation. If there is a question that we're happy to answer it if we're able to. But we will have a formal presentation for the official plan amendment.
And my apologies, that is my fault. I had I had worked on a report which unfortunately didn't get into the package, but we did bring this back following the October decision with a report indicating that we were taking this back to council for the housekeeping amendment, and all the relevant details were included in that report. I can call it up if we wish to go through it.
Does anyone want to see the report? This is basically a housekeeping for the OP.
No, sorry, for the rezoning
For the
because
zoning
the
first.
mapping had the wrong EP layer on it.
Okay, right. Okay, so we're okay with that? All right, so the motion I've got is from Dan Meeks and Bill Everett that council receive comments from the public and consider passing the draft bylaw, being a bylaw to amend 2011-52 as amended by bylaw 2022-61 later in the meeting. So if there's any questions.
And if we can also ask for any public input as well.
Yes. Okay, let's do the public first. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak on this? I don't.
And if there is anyone joining virtually that wishes to speak, can you use the raise hand feature at this time?
And no raised hands that I can see from here.
That's right. I see no one.
Okay. And does council have any questions or comments? All right, I will call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. All right. So what do we do with the next one?
He's gonna do that. They're gonna do the one with the official plan. So I'm just gonna go ahead, but you've already done the.
Okay, I'm going to read the motion and then I think Dimitri, Sonia's going to do this. Okay, moved by Dan Meeks, seconded by Bill Everett, that council adopt the proposed official plan amendment number 1 to implement provincial bills 13 and 109 as per the draft bylaw shown in attachment 1 to the report. Further, that council directs staff to prepare and send the official plan amendment package to the County of Frontenac for approval. Sonia?
Great. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening to you, members of council. For the members that I have not met yet and for the benefit of the public, my name is Sonia Bolton. I am the manager of community planning for the County of Frontenac, and my team at the county has the privilege of providing the day-to-day planning services here for Central Frontenac. So I am here with a colleague tonight. Dimitri will be speaking to you a little bit later with an information report about Bill 23. I'm here to talk about Bills 13 and 109. And if you're confused already by the numbers, that's okay. There have been a lot of provincial changes in the last year, so we're going to try and get everybody up to speed here. But so essentially, I'm here, like I said, to talk about 2 bills. And in addition to just having information, we're actually making and proposing some changes to your official plan so that you can comply with those provincial bills. The first one is Bill 13, which was the Supporting Businesses and People Act of 2021, and then Bill 109, the More Homes for Everyone Act of 2022. So the purpose of the amendment is to include policies into your official plan that will speak to things such as what is a complete planning application, direction on pre-application consultation for planning applications, and then the ability to do delegated authority for certain planning approvals if you so wish. So Bill 23, the main change to the Planning Act was to provide municipal councils with more authority to allow certain planning decisions to be made by committees of council or by staff. So in addition to other forms of delegated authority, for example, right now you can delegate the authority to make certain consent decisions to staff. This change under Bill 13 now allows municipalities to delegate decisions dealing with minor amendments to a zoning bylaw, such as a temporary use bylaw or the removal of holding symbols. So what the official plan does is it proposes what I call enabling policies for the township to delegate your authority for various approvals as long as they meet the rules that the province has. But this doesn't actually delegate your authority. So the next step would be is if you wanted to delegate approvals, you would pass a delegated authority bylaw. But you can't pass a delegated authority bylaw until you have policies in your official plan. So it's like kind of like a chicken and egg thing. You've got to line all crossing my farm analogies, line your ducks all up in a row, right? To make sure that if you want to use a certain tool, you have to have policies in place in order to make use of that tool. So that's what we're doing tonight. You're not actually making any changes as to how you're going to do it. You're putting in place the policy framework that allows you to make changes by bylaw at a future date. So the next change has to do with Bill 109. And Bill 109 came into place last year, and there were actually 2 major changes. The first came into effect July 1st of last year, and all municipalities were required to delegate their authority for the decisions on site plan applications to staff. So council did do that last year at the end of June. The second major change with respect to Bill 109 is the requirement to return application fees if decisions on certain applications are not made within the time frame set out by the province. So you can see in the chart here, this it doesn't affect just an official plan amendment, but it affects an official plan amendment combined with a rezoning or a zoning bylaw amendment, zoning bylaw amendments on their own, as well as site plan control. And you can see here in the chart, as you go further along in time past the deadline, you have to refund more and more of the money. So this is problematic because not all planning applications are straightforward. And we work in a system where we We try and work back and forth with an applicant if issues arise to help them come to a solution. This really puts us under the clock to a point where it's almost not even feasible, particularly if you have an official plan amendment combined with a rezoning, and the official plan amendment has to go through you folks and then go to the county. Like there's just, to meet the timeline is just, it's going to be almost impossible. And we don't want to see the townships losing the fees that they collect to cover the costs of processing these applications. So we have been meeting with township staff, both at Central and the other 3 townships in the county, and talking about this probably since, I'm going to say, the end of the summer, beginning of September. And essentially the consensus from a staff perspective that we came to is similar to what other municipalities are doing, is that we're now going to require more detailed pre-application processes for those more complicated files. And those that process would also include the technical review of studies and reports. So normally we would tell people at pre-application, you have to do these studies or reports, and then they would submit the package and we'd say, okay, you've submitted everything we've asked for, we can deem it complete. And then we do the technical review. So what we're basically saying now is we need to do all the technical reviews before we deem it complete, because the moment you deem it complete as an application, the clock starts. And I will say, we have asked the question legally, is that when it comes to the refund of fees, it is not optional. So even if an applicant says to you, it's okay, keep the fee, legally you cannot. If you go past the date, you must return the funds. So that is what we are looking at going towards. Many municipalities is we just have a much more robust pre-application process. For site plan control, we're fortunate that we can use conditional approvals for that, kind of like you do with consents and minor variances for committee of adjustment, which everybody's going to learn all about on February 1st at our training session. But for site plan control, we can use conditional approvals. And so you're able to approve a site plan within 60 days. I'm sorry, I should say staff, because unfortunately you had to delegate your authority for that, but you can do a conditional approval, which then will lay out a list of conditions, and then say you give 1 year to fulfill those conditions. And then the agreement isn't actually signed and registered on title until those conditions are fulfilled. An outcome of this will be, unfortunately, it's unlikely we'll be able to do concurrent applications going forward because of the differing timelines. So for instance, if somebody needed a rezoning and they needed a site plan agreement because they were building, I don't know, a gas station, let's just say, right? And they needed to, so before we would take both applications and run them in tandem and just make sure we passed the zoning bylaw amendment first before we signed and registered the agreement. Now they're going to have to go through the zoning process and complete that before they apply for the site plan. And that is just, again, it is an unfortunate consequence of what we've been given in the legislation. So again, the official plan amendment that you're looking at today puts policies that enable you to then pass a pre-application consultation bylaw that lays out the process in more detail and define for your township what constitutes a complete application. So tonight doesn't change the process. We'll be back with another bylaw, but you're putting the policies in place that give you the authority to pass those bylaws down the road. In terms of timelines, so the county of Frontenac, we did a similar official plan amendment to our official plan that basically gives all of the townships the ability to pass your official plan amendment. So we completed all of that on December 21st. Technically, the refunds were supposed to start as of January 1st this year, but municipalities did receive a letter from the ministry, from the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing. It was at the very end of December, indicating their intent to extend that deadline to July 1st. But they have to go back into session and pass that in legislature. So it doesn't actually exist yet, but we are expecting an extension on that timeline. So this month, all 4 townships in the county are addressing similar proposed official plan amendments to deal with bills 13 and 109. So in terms of next steps, we have been doing research anyways on updating fee bylaws for planning applications. So we've kind of held off because if we put in place this, let's say, more robust pre-application process, that looks at reviewing technical studies, we're actually gonna have to start charging for pre-application. It may mean that the actual application fees don't go up that much, but you may need to break it apart and make sure that you're covering your costs at those early stages as well. We will be coming back to either update or create pre-application consultation bylaws for you to reflect that process. We'll be back to help you update your site plan control bylaw. And we're also looking at the issue of peer reviews. So even before we found out about the conservation authorities, beg your pardon, through Bill 23, which Dimitri will speak about in a little bit, we were looking at opportunities where if we do have to review studies, it's not uncommon for there not to be somebody on staff either at the county or the township levels that has the expertise to review certain specific studies. So we have to go looking for a consultant to do that peer review for us. And it can be helpful to have somebody already on retainer. And if we were to do that at the county level, then it would be a service we could make available to all of the townships. So we're kind of exploring our options there for what happens with respect to peer reviews. And so that is the end of my formal presentation, but I'm sure there's lots of questions, and that's okay. I'm happy to answer whatever I can.
There may be lots or there may be none because it's a big ball to take into consideration. Planning is not a simple thing at all. Any questions from any of council? Any questions from anyone in the public? Okay, no questions. I have a motion. Now, Dimitri's going to do another section.
So I think he is later in the agenda as an information report. So
That's this
he, there's nothing I think to pass for that. It's just to receive the information. And we just figured
Yes.
again, because of the complexity of what is being, handed down from the province, it would be good to provide a short presentation just as for council to ask questions if they have questions about that
Okay.
bill as well.
on the agenda.
Okay, so the motion that I read is that council directs staff to prepare and send the official plan amendment package to the County of Frontenac for approval. All in favor? Any questions? Motion's carried.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, now we are at deferred items. We have a motion moved by Nikki Gowdy and seconded by Philip Smith. The council confirms that the pickleball court may remain in its present location until such time as a development proposal determines if either can be permanently incorporated into the design proposal for the school site or needs to be relocated to accommodate the preferred development for said site. And that this commitment does not include a specific 5-year horizon due to the uncertainty of the timing for redevelopment plan for the school. And further, that any grant application requests from either pickleball ad hoc committee or the pickleball subcommittee of the OSO Rec Committee be made through a recommendation from the committee to council. So, discussion. All those in favor? Carried. No presentations on this tonight. We still haven't heard from the lawyer, but that will be coming back as soon as we get it. All right, Titchburn Rink. I have a motion moved by Philip Smith, seconded by Nikki Gowdy. Whereas District 4 Recreation Committee is seeking permission from Rhonda Petty and Douglas Starling for the temporary use of a portion of their property in order to continue providing an outdoor skating rink in Titchburn until such time as council decides whether it wishes to purchase the property for a permanent rink facility. Now therefore it be it resolved that council authorize the mayor and the clerk to enter into a temporary lease agreement with Rhonda Petty and Douglas Starling as set out in the draft agreement attached to this report. Any questions or comments? Nikki?
Thank you through you, Madam Mayor. It says at the second last paragraph that as the budget process is not finalized, nor has a decision been made with respect to whether to invest the money in this site, that staff cannot recommend to commit purchasing the property. When is it all just based on the budget process? Then staff will make a recommendation?
Yeah, it will be budget and it will be expense. Like,
Okay.
we've got some numbers, so we'd have to look at what that means for the budget.
So that will be presented to us at budget time then?
Yes,
Okay,
either the 30th or the 31st.
okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Philip?
Sorry, thank you, Madam Mayor. Just the report indicates that the Conservation Authority indicated that a permit and a hydrogeological study would be required. And when we met with them on site, there was some different discussion around not the rink itself needing a geotechnical study being done, but the hydro poles. And if the hydro poles were relocated, she indicated that it would not necessarily be required, but perhaps test holes.
Cindy, you're there to speak to that?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. That's correct. And I think I did mention that that was not necessarily going to be required. It might be required depending on the facility. And we would certainly work with cheaper options if we certainly can get away with that in terms of, until we know what the actual facility will look like in terms of what kind of lighting and whatnot. But yes, I think Tyson seemed quite comfortable with the test hole idea if that was going to satisfy that condition.
Okay. Another one?
Yeah, if I could just follow up. The actual agreement talks about hours of operation. So I don't know if we've had those discussions with the owner and the rec committee. And then the other bit of that is, have we spoken with the owner and do we know when use could actually start?
No, I have not spoken to the owners yet. We're bringing this lease agreement for council first to see if you were, in favor of this, so we'll send this off to them. And then we'll put dates and hours and everything and bring that back. So you'll have that. Okay, and with the rec committee. So you, as the rec committee, needs to talk about this in regards to hours, or are you leaving it just open?
Okay, Nikki?
Thank you. So how long of a turnaround are we talking about? Like, we're at the end of January now. We'd like to see the rink get some use this year. So how quick?
It can turn around very quickly. My mind's not on. Oh, there it is. It can be a quick turnaround. So if you can just give us some numbers or some dates for the rec committee. I know I see Bob is here as a member of as the chair of the committee. So then we can put those in.
Go ahead, Philip.
Is there any way then for us tonight, if council is happy with the lease agreement and moving forward that way, that it doesn't need to return to council again? It just can be moved forward. So it doesn't take another 2 weeks or a month for a decision to be made?
No. We wouldn't have to bring it back to council. I mean, this is approving so that the mayor and I can go ahead and sign it. So we'll make the discussions with the owners of the property and then we'll go ahead and sign it. Yeah, we can work with Bob.
Okay. All right. Any more questions on the motion? Susan?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Not a question, but just following up on Councillor Smith's comment about the hydrological study. If I look at the text, and I've got to find it again, it says that the Rideau Valley Conservation Authority was consulted and has indicated a permit would be required and a hydrogeology study or soil sample test. So the magic is in the or.
So I guess
Just a comment.
from tonight, the permit needs to be applied for if this motion goes through. That's the first thing, is apply for the permit for Mississippi Valley? No.
No, it's saying that, or you might need one, depending on,
No.
at least they can use the rink. This lease agreement will give them the authority to go ahead and put the rink in for this season.
With
And then you have to
no
explore.
boreholes, no.
No, not at this
permits, no
point,
nothing.
from what I
On a-
understand.
That's correct. On a temporary basis, they didn't seem to have any issue with
Okay.
operationally going ahead. It's when we're going to do any sort of changes or upgrades to make it permanent, that's when we would be applying for the permit and figuring out what sort of
Yes.
study or boreholes we would need.
Okay,
It's when
So
we get to the
that-
improvement part of the.
that
piece.
helps. We don't have to do a bunch of stuff
No,
to get started.
no.
Okay.
Just get them going. Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? All those in favor? Carried. All right. Now, Oliver Clow request for consideration. Moved by Nikki Gowdy, seconded by Philip Smith, that council receive the report entitled Request from Clow Road Widening Consideration prepared by the Deputy Clerk for information. And further, that council deny the request for financial consideration for the road widening condition relating to consent application B 2922 Hinchinbrook and B 3022 Hinchinbrook for the reasons as outlined in the report. And I think the big thing in the report was what we do for one, we'll have to do for others, and it gets very expensive and defeats the purpose of trying to have sections of road if we need to do some construction or some corner changes. Any questions, Philip?
So if that's the approach we're taking, I just want to make sure that we're consistent with all future applications that road widening is there. Because as I've indicated before, on the particular night that this was approved, the application ahead of that did not have a road widening portion on it as well. So
Maybe Sonia and Dimitri could speak to this just to help straighten us out. If there was an application that it was swamp on one side and that was where the road was, that was this case in that application, Philip, wasn't it? That it was wetlands and no sense.
that's what we were told, yes.
Yeah.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. My name is Dimitri. I'm one of the planners with the County of Frontenac. So to answer that question, I was there when that decision was made. I think the question is, why did we take a road widening on one property and why did we not take a road widening on another property on the same night? The answer is that the one property where we did ask for a road widening, the road allowance was deficient in the width that is required by the current township road standards. So I don't remember what the exact details were. I think it was 14 meters. Township official plan requires 20. So we asked for a road widening there. The other application, there was no need to take the road widening because if I recall correctly, there was a significant wetland in the area where that road widening would have occurred. So it didn't make practical sense to take a road widening on a feature that cannot be developed into a road in the future. Now, to add to that, when we look at development applications and applications for severances, if there are roads that meet that minimum road width of 20 meters, then we're certainly not going to ask for a road widening because there's no need to do that. So I think we've been consistent in that approach. When we look at road widenings, one of the criteria that we do check, especially on pre-consultations, when we discuss applications, well, at least when Jenny and I discuss applications with applicants, we let them know that if the road in front of you, the property that you're looking to sever does not meet that 20-meter road allowance requirement, then we will ask for a road widening along the frontage.
It's a case.
Okay. Does that answer your question? Okay. Nikki.
I just like what Dimitri said about that he informs the applicant. This time the applicant wasn't informed about this road widening. I think that's why he came back kind of shocked over it. So just, making sure that going forward, the practice is to make sure that all applicants are informed of this.
So maybe that's a good idea that we speak to them one-on-one about that particular condition, because especially to farmers who've been there for years and have all this property, and they probably haven't severed too many lots, so they wouldn't know about it. Good point. Okay. If there are no other questions or comments, all those in favor? Carried. Okay. All right, staff reports, Treasury. Motion moved by Philip Smith and seconded by Dan Meeks that council receive the check distribution reports totaling $1,900,107.99 as prepared by the treasurer for information. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Carried. I didn't realize that went so fast.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. Motion moved by Philip Smith, seconded by Nikki Gowdy. that council approves the following apportionment of assessments as recommended by impact for 2022 and 2023 as applicable for the following roll numbers. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 there. Any questions on any of those? Okay, all those in favor? Carried. Thank you, Michael. We have a motion, Nikki Gowdy and Philip Smith, that council receives the CFFR report dated January 24th, 2023, as prepared by the Manager of Emergency Services Fire Chief for information. Any question on the report? All those in favor? Carried. Any comment you'd like to make?
Wondered, is council wanting more detail on the calls, or are they satisfied with the reports as the way they are?
Maybe every
Just
6
for revenue
months,
counts.
we could have the bigger report or.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Phil.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We did have more breakdown before, right? I mean, this is a condensed version.
Yes, so we can, actually, we have a new records management system. We can make it more detailed than it was before. So if you want the actual calls in there, we can do that. If council wishes, we could try it. If it's too detailed, we can go back to a different route.
Yeah.
I personally look at to see how much resources are we spending on first response calls that, you know, maybe really an ambulance service versus a fire service, but that's what I look for in the details. So
maybe a monthly report of expenses to that
Or every couple of months
every couple months.
would be fine. Yeah.
We can do that.
Nikki?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Chief, you used to give us the bylaw calls. This one doesn't include the bylaw. Would a more detailed report include the bylaw calls as well?
I see you, Madam Mayor, to Councilor Gowdy. Yes, December, we didn't have much going on with the bylaws, so yeah, for sure, that'll be back.
Okay,
And then Susan.
Susan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, but the questions were already asked by Councillor Smith and Gowdy, so I can.
All right. Great. Okay, we have another one. Moved by Bill and seconded by Lynn. Got to get these signatures straight. Whereas the 208 GMC half-ton pickup truck is scheduled for replacement in the fire and emergency services fleet. And where it has been identified to obtain bids with RFQs, and it was determined that a sufficient vehicle could be sourced due to difficulty procuring new vehicles because of the lack of supplier interest. And whereas at the June 10th council meeting, January 10th council meeting, council defeated the motion requesting council approve to purchase a used truck for $72,900 based on the sole sourced bid. And whereas at the January 19th special budget meeting, council indicated it would reconsider the request if 3 quotes were obtained, which has now been procured and detailed in this report. And whereas the procurement policy allows non-competitive contracting and states it may be justified when the required item is in short supply due to market conditions or when competitive sourcing for low value procurement would be uneconomical or would not attract bids. Now, therefore, it be it resolved that council approve the recommendation of the Manager of Fire and Emergency Services Fire Chief to proceed with the purchase of a 2020 Ford F-250 4-door 3/4 ton truck in the amount of $72,900 with an additional $20,000 for emergency equipment, which is included in the proposed 2023 budget. And further, that the Manager of Emergency Service be authorized to issue a purchase order for the truck, including the additional $20,000 for emergency equipment as identified in the report. Any questions or comments? Nikki?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to put on the table that we defer this motion. We're not done. We've had 1/2 day of budget talks. We haven't really made much headway with the budget at all. And again, we haven't decided about a truck and you're pre-authorizing a purchase that hasn't been approved. So I would feel more comfortable if we waited.
Okay, we did put a deposit on it, I believe. Yes. Okay. Craig?
Through you, Madam Mayor, but that deposit, Chris, it was refundable, you said at the budget meeting?
Yes.
Sorry, that's correct, yes.
So we ain't gonna lose the deposit.
No.
And
Okay,
I would agree with Nikki.
all right. So
You just checked.
everyone's in agreement to to defer this until we get budget numbers finalized. Everyone's okay with that? All those in favor of that? All right, it is deferred.
Okay, thank you, Council.
There we go. All right, moved by Philip Smith, seconded by Nikki Gowdy, that council receives the report and draft bylaw updating the procedural bylaw and provide feedback to staff before the February 14th, 2023 council meeting, so staff can bring back a final bylaw for consideration at its February 28th, 2023 council meeting. That will give us some time to go through it. All those in favor? Carried. Kathy, how should we do it? If we find something, should we just make a list and
Sure,
then send
make a
that
list.
to Kathy?
Yes, because the thing is too, maybe council, we may have to spend more time going through it. So if you have your comments, and it might be a way we can go through it sort of section by section, because it is fairly detailed. And then that way that everybody understands it, and there may be some necessary changes. So maybe we'll have to slate a little bit of time aside in one of our meetings to go through that,
Okay.
if that's helpful.
Okay. Next, we have Bill 20 planning report.
Dimitri.
Moved by Susan and seconded by Lynn, that council receive the report entitled Summary of Legislative Changes from Bill 23, prepared by Dimitri for information purposes only.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm just going to share my screen with everybody here. Great. So my name is Dimitri. I am one of the planners at the County of Frontenac, and I'm here to talk to you about the changes that have been brought on as a result of Bill 23, also known as the More Homes Built Faster Act, that received royal assent on November 28th, 2022. And the reason I'm doing this is we prepared a report. There are some fairly technical changes. So would be a good opportunity for me to summarize what occurred in this bill, what changes have been brought forward. And if you have any questions, then we can try and answer them the best that we can. So while the bill introduced a number of changes to various statutes and regulations that make up the planning framework in Ontario, only those that may impact the township and the county have been discussed in the report, and they are the only issues that I will be talking about in this presentation. Overall, it appears that the bill will result in changes to the way that development applications are reviewed, who can appeal certain applications, how parkland dedication is collected, and how provincially significant wetlands are evaluated. So one of the most significant changes resulting from the bill was the change to the Conservation Authority involvement on planning matters. So the bill has effectively prohibited conservation authorities from providing comments to their municipal partners on anything related to natural heritage matters. So in other words, conservation authorities are no longer permitted to consider impacts on wetlands, watercourses, or shorelines of water bodies in their review of development applications. This will have a significant impact on the township as well as the county, because prior to this bill, municipal planning staff have relied on expert advice from the Conservation Authority on the potential impact that developments may have on natural heritage features. And this is problematic because the provincial policy statement, which is the overarching policy that essentially provides the minimum standards of consideration on a planning matter, requires municipal planners and decision makers, being committee or council, to ensure that any proposed developments considers impact on natural heritage features and systems. Since municipal planning staff currently do not have the necessary expertise to properly assess impact of a development application on natural heritage, the changes to the regulations effectively leave an expertise gap that will need to be addressed by this township. Going forward, both the township and the county will need to determine how to conduct natural heritage review.
Is that something a staff could be trained to do?
I think so, Madam Mayor, I think the answer is yes, but because conservation authorities provide us input from a variety of different professionals that are employed within their organization. So when we receive comments that they come from people that are expert, like hydrologists, wetland ecologists, other types of biologists that are involved in specific types of subsets for the various ecosystem services that are provided by natural heritage features. So the problem is, I'm not sure if one staff member can handle all of the expertise to essentially properly review an application the way that a conservation authority would have done it traditionally. So in terms of the second change, Bill 23 also restricts who can appeal minor variance and consent or severance applications. So prior to the changes, both types of applications could be appealed by third parties, such as neighbors, lake association, or community groups. The change now only allows certain persons that are prescribed by the Act to appeal those applications. So what this means is that, well, the persons that are prescribed by the Act, or those who can actually appeal the application, basically only now include the municipality, the applicant, the minister, utility energy companies, and railway operators. So your neighbors won't be able to appeal a minor variance or a consent application if they're anticipating that it's going to have a negative impact on the way they live their lives. Other applications such as official plan amendments and zoning bylaw amendments can still, however, be appealed by third parties. So that has not changed. There's also been lots of talk in the media about how the bill will also require municipalities to permit a maximum of 3 dwelling units on a property. And the one thing that I'd like to point out here is that this change only applies to properties that are located within areas that are called urban residential lands. And urban residential lands in the legislation are defined as lands that are located within a hamlet or an identified settlement area, and that are serviced by both municipal water and sewer. So partially serviced, it does not count, it does not meet that definition. The one thing that we should note, though, is that at this point, it's unclear if developments that take place on communal services that include both water and sewage services that are located within the settlement area will need to meet these requirements. And that's something that we're going to end up working with the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing in the next few months once more information becomes available. So Bill 23 now also excludes any projects that propose 10 or fewer residential units from the process of site plan control, as well as the review of exterior design and landscape considerations. So as a background, site plan control is a tool that's prescribed by the Planning Act that attempts to reduce land use conflicts by allowing planning staff to manage and review small details of an application, such as the location of snow storage, garbage facilities, landscape buffers, how people enter and exit the property, and things of that nature. This will have an impact on the township because the township's current site plan control bylaw applies to developments that propose 6 or more dwelling units. And as a result, the township will need to update their site plan control and perhaps their zoning bylaw to prescribe some of the issues that we typically deal with at site plan application through the building permit route. So that's something that we'll have to think about going forward. Another change to the Planning Act has removed the requirement to hold a public meeting before the approval of a plan of subdivision. So this change does still, however, allow the municipalities in Ontario to adopt policies that outline the criteria by which public meetings should take place. That's, of course, if council wishes to do so. County planning staff are of the opinion that public meetings are important tools of information exchange between nearby residents and impacted parties, and their knowledge needs to be considered through the review of a draft plan of subdivision. Therefore, county staff are recommending that public meetings are still going to be, should still be required for any proposed subdivision within the township.
I think if we don't have public meetings, it looks like we're trying to hide something.
I think it's important to gain public input for a development. I mean, especially if, you're used to living beside an empty field that's going to become a subdivision. Public input is important, especially sometimes when there are issues that exist that municipal staff may not really know about. And, that local knowledge is very, very important in planning matters. So there's also changes to the parkland dedication requirements. The change to the parkland dedication requirements will actually not have an impact on Central Frontenac because the township's current maximum rate of parkland dedication or cash in lieu of parkland dedication falls below the maximum that's now prescribed by the legislation. But it should be noted that the township will now need to ensure that 60% of their parkland dedication reserves are allocated or spent every year. Now, just to be clear, the term allocate has not yet been defined in the legislation. So if you have large capital projects that you're setting parkland cash in lieu of parkland dedication funds aside for, it's unclear at this point how long those funds can remain in that account, how long they can be allocated for, and if your priorities within your municipality changes, it's unclear if you can reallocate those funds to a different project should your priorities change or should the needs of the community change. So that's something we're still waiting on for clarification from the ministry. There's also another change to the parkland dedication requirements. Sometimes instead of collecting cash in lieu, which is what happens most of the time for one-off severance applications, this happens for large developments or sometimes for large subdivisions, is that parkland is identified within a specific development. And the change now basically allows only the applicant to identify the lands that should be dedicated for parkland. So what that means is there is no process for county or municipal planning staff to negotiate what lands should be dedicated for parkland. As you can imagine, this is problematic because if you're trying to maximize value for your development, you may not necessarily want to dedicate lands for parkland if they are good developable lands. So there's the risk that the lands that you will receive for parkland dedication could be more expensive to build on and to develop if you are looking for a park in that area. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
We certainly wouldn't get the prime land at all.
Yeah, and I think the one significant thing to mention about this is that based on my reading of the legislation and my reading of the papers produced from other planning firms or legal firms, it doesn't seem that there is a mechanism to appeal the decision or the dedication of the parkland by the applicant. So the municipal planners would not be able to negotiate. We would have to, under the direction of council, appeal that parkland dedication to the Ontario Land Tribunal rather than going through the traditional process that we typically go through now, which is negotiation. We say maybe this is a good land for parkland rather than trying to make something out of potentially nothing. So
do you think we should be looking at raising our 5% to something higher?
I think that I can't answer that question now. I need more information for that. I mean, you would need to take a look at what your needs are as far as what your parkland needs are, what your recreational facilities needs are.
We have this big trail that runs right through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so I think, there is certainly potential for that if that's something you wish to do. But, parkland is finite. It is important to ensure that you have adequate parkland for a growing community. So it is something you may want to consider, and we're happy to do that should you provide direction for us to do that. So the last change that I'm going to discuss revolves around how wetlands are evaluated within the province. So this is specifically related to the Ontario Wetland Evaluation System, which is used to assess provincially significant wetlands. So prior to the changes, when the wetlands were evaluated to determine if they meet the provincial criteria for being considered provincially significant, the evaluations either had to be conducted by staff from the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry or the Conservation Authority, or depending on your process, the assessment would at least require to be reviewed by the province if it was done by a third party. So if the applicant's biologist did an assessment and they determined it was or was not a provincially significant wetland, then there would still be some sort of peer review associated with that. It appears now that these changes actually remove any peer review requirement for wetland assessment, as long as the wetland assessment is completed by someone who is qualified by the provincial wetland evaluation system. So basically, if you pass the wetland evaluation exam that the province sets out, you can redesignate and reevaluate wetlands as you wish. So in addition to this, the changes also now effectively remove the concept of what are called wetland complexes. So a complex is essentially lots of little pocket wetlands that are kind of beside each other. They're made up of many different parts, but they all kind of perform the same function of doing, what a wetland does. Basically, this new change allows for pocket wetlands that are sufficiently separated from other wetlands to be evaluated on their own individual merit and the own ecosystem services that they provide, rather than considering them as part of a larger system. So as you can imagine, one-off wetlands may not meet all the criteria for being considered provincially significant and therefore be removed from the provincially significant designation. So because of this could be problematic, because you can have impact on those pocket wetlands that will have an impact on the larger wetland system. But now the changes to the evaluation system allow for those one-off wetlands to be reevaluated. In addition to this, the criteria that's used to evaluate the wetland system has also been modified to remove considerations of presence of threatened species. And it's also reduced the weight that's assigned to cultural heritage values. So things like hunting or fishing. So basically, the importance that wetlands provide for hunting and fishing, the value of that is reduced for the purposes of evaluating the importance or the significance of a wetland. This is overall problematic because for a majority of the wetlands in the township as well as the county, they have not yet been evaluated. And as a result, there may be some financial negative impact on municipalities and applicants alike, should there be an assessment or a reassessment of wetlands within the township. So the changes to the OWS has no impact on the regulation of local wetlands, however, that are still regulated by the zoning bylaw. So this specifically only applies to large provincially significant wetlands, not local wetlands that are not deemed to be provincially significant. So that concludes my presentation. I'm more than happy to take any questions, and thank you for your attention.
Okay. Any questions or comments? We are having a training session February 1st as well. I'm sure this will be spoken of again. Okay, thank you, Dimitri.
Thank you very much.
If there are no questions, all in favor of receiving the information report? Carried. Lots of new things, so we'll be learning along, probably harder for us because we'll have one thing in our mind and it's changed.
Want a break?
I think those folks are waiting for this one.
Oh, yeah, for those next.
Yes. Moved by Lynn and seconded by Susan, that council receive this report for information and consider the passage of the draft road closure bylaw later in the meeting, and it's road closing bylaw for Frontenac. Questions or comments? We've already dealt with this.
Yes, we have. Mhm.
Okay, all those in favor? Carried. All right, does council want to take a little break? Have a cup of coffee and a cookie? Or not? Oh. Okay, let's continue on. We are at committee reports.
The liquor license?
Oh, right. Okay. All right, we have committee reports and minutes. Moved by Susan and seconded by Lynn that council received the minutes from the District 2 Recreation Committee meeting held January 5th, 2023 for information. Dan, anything to add to the, looks like you had a great turnout and some great ideas.
Yeah, we're getting some more new members and I think we're gonna do okay there and different things that people want to see. So I think we're gonna get it together there.
Excellent. Any questions or comments for Dan? Nikki? Just Dan's, yeah. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, moved by Lynn and seconded by Susan that council received the minutes of the District 4 Recreation Committee meeting held November 23rd, 2022 for information. District 4. Nikki.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We just were wondering about the request from the township. If anybody has looked at those or if there's any updates on any of the stuff that we can take back.
You mean the things that are done and the things that aren't done?
Yeah.
They'll go to budget.
Because Andy has, I know when we had a discussion with the managers and things, some of those items, he knows that has been completed. So I think that's what we'll discuss them at the budget. And his budget is for the one on the 30th. We'll be talking about that.
Okay, but something simple like moving the cement blocks at the demolition derby didn't move back. Is it up to the rec committee to get in touch with the fair board to have those moved, or is it?
I would think
It's not
so.
us.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the other thing I want us to keep thinking about with our rec committees is volunteerism. There are committees that have people with skills that would go and paint a building or dig a hole if a hole was needed. And I think we have to go back to that and ask them what they can do as a volunteer group. As long as we have the names of the people who are working, they're covered by liability. So we seem to have gotten away from that over the years, and the money is just flowing out the door. All those in favor of the minutes? Motion's carried. Moved by Susan, seconded by Lynn, that council received minutes from the MVCA board meeting held October the 19th, 2022 for information. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Carried. Moved by Susan, seconded by Lynn, that council received the following correspondence, and it's 1 to 3 on our package. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Carried. We're at the bylaws. Moved by Lynn and seconded by Susan that bylaw 2023-07 being a bylaw to amend bylaw 2011-52 as amended be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed this 24th day of January 2023. Questions, comments? All those in favor? Carried. Moved by Lynn and seconded by Susan that bylaw 2023-08 being a bylaw to amend bylaw 2021-45 being a bylaw to adopt an official plan be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed this 24th day of January 2023. All those in favor? Carried.
Yep, she did that first.
it is the official
That
plan.
was the official. You did the zoning bylaw one first.
Oh, okay. And moved by Susan, seconded by Lynn, that bylaw 2023-09 being a bylaw to close up and convey road allowance, Rosnick, be read a first and second and third time, and finally pass this 24th day of January 2023. All those in favor? Carried. Now, this is under new or other business.
Your notice of motion.
Oh, sorry, yes. Any notice of motions?
No, there are not.
Any giving of notice of motion?
No, there are not, Madam Mayor.
Right. So now we are at new business. Yes. Motion moved by Lynn and seconded by Susan that council declares the Heritage Festival Talent Show on February 17th, 2023 at the Soldiers Memorial Hall as an event of municipal significance. And further that the CAO clerk be authorized to sign a letter in support or any other documentation that may be required from Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario in order to allow the local brewery Inc., Jen and Steve Trussell, to apply for a special occasion permit for said event. Questions, comments? I think we're going to have a great family day with everything that's going to be going on. Although, Jen, do you have any further comments?
I don't believe I have any further comments. No, thank you for adding it to the agenda, Madam Mayor and Council.
Can you check your microphone settings? We
Oh.
can't hear you at this end. We still can't hear you. I'm wondering if you can put something into the.
Sorry,
Oh, I don't know if we
can you hear me
it.
now?
We don't have any questions for you, Jen.
Okay.
So sorry, it's not working, but I'm good. I don't have any
Questions,
questions either.
Okay, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Jen, if there are any further questions, staff will get in touch with you. Okay. All right, I have a motion to adjourn. Moved by, is that Craig?
No, that's Susan.
That's Susan, okay. Moved by Susan and seconded by Lynn, that bylaw 2023-10 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the regular council meeting held January 24th, 2023, be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed this 24th day of January 2023. And further that this meeting be adjourned until Monday, January 30th at 1 p.m. Said meeting to be held. I thought it was being held at the fire hall.
No, this one's up here. Because it was available in the afternoon.
Are you sure?
Mhm.
Okay. At Soldiers Memorial Hall. All those in favor? Carried.
Because we were going to do in the morning. We had to go to fire hall. Some weren't available in the morning. So we changed it to. the
Oh.
afternoon.